Welcome to Cody in the Cinema. Today I'm answering the question, should you watch Sátántangó at 7.5 hours? Is it worth your time? Is it as good as it's cracked up to be on places like Letterboxd? Or is it just kind of a long, dry art film that's sort of full of itself and doesn't really meet the mark? My answer to this question, after having just watched it, I just finished the film. You absolutely should watch this movie if you're ready to play on its terms and if you love slow cinema. If those two things are true, this movie is so good. Like, the number of times in the last few years that I've walked away from a movie feeling this many things in my head bouncing around, it's not many. And that's why I wanted to shoot this video right after I finished it, because wow, I mean, what an experience this is. So the briefly a little bit about it, if you don't know what this is based on a novel, and it's, the story is kind of straightforward in its own way. It's a group of agricultural people in this community. The society around them's kind of fallen, and they are living in this apocalyptic-ish scenario, and they're trying to figure out what to do with some money. They have a leader who helps guide them in that, and that's the basis of the plot. You're going to get a real good sense of that setting in the first few minutes when you watch Tarr direct the scene in which you see cattle jumping on one another, and right away that humor. I don't know how to put it with the humor, because I don't know the words, because sometimes the humor is an animal is doing something disgusting, it's funny. But there are a few scenes where the pitch black humor goes to a place I just haven't experienced before. There's one scene in particular where someone is looking in a window, and I think that's supposed to be funny, because it was funny to me, and I shouldn't be laughing at it. Who's this for? Okay. Black and white photographers. If you enjoy crisp, beautiful, well-composed, thoughtful, innovative black and white photography, like if you have a social media page and you have all these cool black and white stills up there, you absolutely must see Sátántangó. And there are a few other black and white films I'm thinking of that are very creative with that. There were a few times, just The Night of the Hunter came to mind, and a few other films, but you absolutely need to see this picture if you're interested in black and white photography. This film would be a masterpiece in and of itself just for that reason. Some of the shots, the exteriors and so forth, I mean, sometimes this director is compared to Andrei Tarkovsky, and I think that's a fair comparison in some ways. I don't really think they were doing the same thing, and I think Tarkovsky was more spiritual, and he certainly had a better view of humanity than this film did. Wow, this film did not have a good view of humanity. But you need to see it if you're into black and white at all. This is kind of one of those pinnacles of black and white, and especially in cinema. And the reason I said photographers specifically is because Béla Tarr uses a long take, if you aren't familiar, quite often. And you will see some takes that are very long. I mean, he hangs with certain shots well beyond what most directors would ever dare to, including Tarkovsky. So a few other things about this that I was thinking to myself, I'm so glad I didn't stream this. So I have a copy that I got from Orbit DVD, awesome site, and I would not watch this streaming. In fact, if I had the choice between watching this and not watching this based on streaming, I wouldn't stream this, because the quality of the image is going to vary significantly, I would think, on stream, because there's so much black in the film, and it matters, especially toward the end, that I really wouldn't want that kind of uneven picture interfering with your experience here. I would get a copy of it, especially if you're someone who collects physical media. I cannot imagine a physical media library that I had without Sátántangó now. Other thoughts I had, and some of these are going to be just bear with me, okay? Because I'm just telling you my reaction, all right? Goodbye Dragon Inn. I thought of this movie a lot as I watched, because there's so much visual storytelling. There's so much in the way that, Tarr gives you a frame, or provides this rotating camera that you don't even immediately know why he's doing that. Or there will be an unusual instance of blocking, like why is that character there, standing there? Why is this character in the way? And just some of that made me think back to this film, and how much this film, which is about a theater, I think, that's closing. It's been a while since I've seen it, and I want to go back and see it because of this film, which is another reason I like the film, because it makes me want to see other films. Anyway, it reminded me of the visual storytelling aspect of this film quite a bit. And another movie that started going through my head, particularly toward the end, and during some of the more depressing and kind of difficult scenes, like there's an evil in this movie. There's an evil. It's just it's at the end of the road, and it's because sometimes people are walking toward a road. It's behind the bar. It's somewhere. I don't know how to put it, but there is an evil that I always sensed lurking everywhere in this film, and the atmosphere drew me in such a way that I kept looking for something almost spiritual to explain how dark this felt, how gross this felt, how out of place I felt as an observer. And I picked this right off the shelf, and bear with me here, because some of you might just want to be like, Cody, you don't know what you're talking about with movies, and maybe I don't, but Skinamarink, man, no kidding. Skinamarink is a movie I was thinking of while I was watching this. Now, to be clear, I don't think Skinamarink is nearly as good of a movie as Sátántangó, although I do think Skinamarink is a fine film in its own right. But if you're unfamiliar, Skinamarink is a highly experimental film that attempts to capture analog horror and these little kids that are having trouble figuring out what demonic force is in their home, or they may not know that, we don't know. There's some creepy stuff going on with toys, and it's that feeling of pure evil that was in that movie that I couldn't quite touch or grasp or get my hand on. Like, that feeling was there for me in parts of Sátántangó. Yet, while I was watching Sátántangó, I was overtaken by its immense beauty. And the way that Tarr was able to get so much goodness out of some of the grossest parts. I mean, there's a part where a guy's drunk throwing up, and there's a pig walking around and grunting, and it's a gorgeous scene, and it should just be awful, and it kind of is, and yet it's captivating and funny. And this is one of those movies that as you watch it, you're going to have so many different feelings. And I mentioned frustration because some of the characters are really frustrating to watch. I did not find myself frustrated with the pace. Not really ever, even though there are a lot of long takes. In fact, I was not bored once in this film. And I'm being honest, I really wasn't bored. I was expecting it to be much more of a slog. What I was expecting was for there to be like four-fifths of it to be like just this awesome masterpiece, and there to be like kind of a weaker fifth thrown in there. But the frustration that I felt had nothing to do with pacing or Tarr's directorial prowess. It just, the situation can be frustrating at times to watch, especially with a couple of the characters who have some issues mentally. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about with the little kid. But overall, this is an essential watch for anyone interested in slow cinema and who's interested in being invested in the way that I think Tarr wants you to be invested, which I really can't explain for you other than to watch it. So that is my honest reaction. I really hope, if you haven't seen this, that you'll take the time to do it. I'm glad I did. I plan on watching this movie all the way through at least one more time. And I can't always say that about long artistic movies, even though I like plenty of them. So that's a bit of a ramble. It's a bit of an honest kind of gut reaction straight out of my living room. I came here and I immediately filmed. So not a lot of prep on this one, not a lot of time to sit down and think of a clever way to provide praise for the film. What was your reaction to it? Some of you that know a lot more about this than I do. I don't know a ton about Tarr. I mean, this is my second picture of his behind Workmaster Harmonies, which I also thought was a masterpiece in its own right. Let me know. Please click that like button. Give me a comment or something. Share your thoughts. We'll see you next time on Cody in the Cinema.